Good morning and welcome to Cheche, the show where opinion counts. We're live on Citizen TV and I'm your host, Udwa Kamimo. We have a new cabinet with mostly new faces. The reshuffle had been anticipated for most of the year, but outrage over corruption seems to have hastened President Uhuru Kenyatta's announcement last night. We'll try to make sense of the appointments through the perspectives of ODM Chairman and Suba MP John Mbadi and Presidential Advisor Abdikadir Mohammed. We also have with us Mohammed Nyoga. He's a senior counsel. He also helped drive the private sector's bribery bill. He's also the chairman of the Central Bank of Kenya board. We have a full house indeed because, as usual, we have the regular panel of David Makali and Umtegi Njau with us. Good morning and welcome to the show. Part of the mirth as we came on air was because David accused us of being the government side. And so, Abdikadir, we'll start with you. You're an advisor, so you must have had some involvement with this reshuffle.
No.
What was the president trying to achieve?
Well, I had no involvement with the reshuffle as the president's business. But in terms of what you had earlier mentioned, the fight against the graft, that I had quite a bit with, and I'm happy to talk on those. But what I would imagine is the president wanted his team back. He wanted a full house back. He wanted to re-energize his team and reboot, so to speak, so that the midterm, the second half of his term, he can handle it with all hands on deck.
Okay. Mr. Mbadi, would you agree that the president has achieved that he's re-energized the government, that he's appointed people who show seriousness in the fight against corruption?
In terms of analyzing the president's appointments or recent so-called reshuffle, I think we need to ask ourselves what necessitated it. And the president, in his own words, actually talked about inefficiency and fighting corruption, which in my view is incompetence. Which is clothing as inefficiency. Now, the appointments that the president made, we need to interrogate and ask ourselves, what is so new about these appointments that would help us, would make us have faith and confidence going forward? The president has replaced the 5 cabinet secretaries who stepped aside and 1 who resigned.
Over corruption allegations.
Over corruption allegations. So 6 cabinet secretaries have been replaced. But the cabinet secretaries who have been there, the others have been retained. Now, the question you need to ask, will there be improved efficiency with the retaining of the 13 cabinet secretaries? I want to start with the cabinet secretary up to yesterday for education, Jacob Kaimenyi.
That was a controversial move.
Yes, has been moved to Ministry of Lands. Now the question is, this is someone who Kenyans have said has mishandled the issue of teacher strike. This is someone who has, under his watch, we have lost education sector in its entirety. How? The leakage of KCP and KCSE is unprecedented. Last week we had a meeting with some university students who came to see us, and the stories they give you is chilling. Therefore, moving him from education to the Ministry of Lands, which is another very complex ministry, is not improving efficiency. I want to go to another cabinet secretary, Balala, who has issues around him, including investigation on 80 million shillings, including a lot of mining licenses that he has issued. Go to the case of Treasury. The president has admitted that there is a problem. He's even proposing to move the budgetary process to State House, admitting that there is a problem at the Treasury. There is the issue of Eurobond, which has not been explained properly and sufficiently. There is the issue of Wario, who is the cabinet secretary for sports. Is a disaster. And I can go on and on. Wahungu has failed literally in Galana irrigation.
Okay, so this is complete dissatisfaction from your end.
The president has just managed to keep giving Kenyans hope.
You see this as musical chairs.
Of course.
Well, I think that was Mbadi, my good friend, wearing the chairman of ODM's cap.
Right. Opposition.
Opposition. If you talk about incompetence, his party has failed to hold an election. This is the chairman whose party has failed to hold an election. And Mbadi is a good friend of mine. The president has had what people have said. The Minister of Education, quite a number of ministers, there's no doubt we have had issues. Parliament has a role to deal with them. As far as the president is concerned, he is happy with their work. Now, education has had issues. It has had issues because the dynamic process. There was a labor issue.
Strikes did not begin with Kaimeni.
And will not end with the Matiang'i if Matiang'i is approved by Parliament. So I think it's one thing to really criticize and say negative, and as a member of the opposition, that is expected. It's something else to say, let the president deliver, and he has said, I want to deliver this routine. Now, the Honorable Balala, people have mentioned things. Anybody in politics in Kenya, you can mention something. The president told many of his ministers, step aside. It's a very unpopular decision. He has paid a huge political price for that. Nothing has been proved yet against any of them. He could have asked them to continue. It would have been a very unpopular decision. He has decided to go with the public and say, okay, let them all go, let me start with a new team. If we start criticizing from the get-go, obviously then you are not going to... So I think the best thing is let the opposition criticize, let the president put his, and then let the Kenyans judge. And in 2.5 years' time, we will all go back to
seek a new mandate.
Let me just step in, because I hear my friend Bandi, I hear Abdikadir. Is it one of those cases where the more you answer the question changes?
No, but let me address this issue. First of all, my great friend, Honorable Abdikadir, actually insinuated that there's incompetence in my party. Actually, we were discussing the government. If there is a forum to discuss my party, I would gladly come. But I wanted to remind him, probably he's forgotten, that ODM is currently carrying out a massive election exercise in the whole country, and it's the only party doing so. So saying that ODM has failed to hold election is not being truthful. No, I didn't want to really make that subject of discussion. The point is, I am not talking about strikes. Strikes can be there, but the way you handle it. And I've mentioned that even it is not the opposition saying that the government has failed to function. It is the president himself admitting that there is incompetence. He's calling it inefficiency. I call it incompetence. It's
okay,
just semantic.
So it's semantic. Mr. Mbadi, what do you make though of Mr. Abdikadir's sense that these people need to be vetted? So you have your chance to send them back home if they don't meet the threshold of competence to serve in public service.
That is debatable. First, the vetting is debatable because two things.
Tyranny of
Number one,
numbers?
the cabinet secretaries, the 13 of them who are there, who have just been transferred, are not candidates of vetting. Even though someone like Kaimeni was almost just survived impeachment in Parliament on technicality, in terms of numbers, but the majority of MPs in Parliament said he should go home. Now, I would want to see how the Speaker will make a ruling on the 13. The way I see it is we need to vet all of them. But again, the vetting exercise in National Assembly has a lot to worry Kenyans also. I sit in the National Assembly, but because of the tyranny of numbers, we expect nothing short of what the president wants to be passed as
a chairman of ODM. When you look at, after the president addressed the nation the other day, and the steps he
outside
took,
over corruption,
whatever he said, the actions he has taken, is there anything positive we can see?
Let me tell you,
search your mind.
That is why I said the president actually wants to give Kenyans hopes and hopes. The same thing he did the other day, I think the other day you are referring to his money, is the same thing he did on 26th of March 2015 when he came to Parliament and actually was given a standing ovation. Everybody thought the president is serious. Immediately thereafter, his actions sent mixed signals. Number one, he disbanded completely through his own initiatives, coming from his state house, coming from his officers as a reporter.
But the entire but I'd like to bring Mr. Nyoga to this, because I think the context of this conversation is corruption. And you drafted this bribery bill 2015. To what extent are you satisfied with this reshuffle, given that the government, cabinet, had been accused to some extent of corruption?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, the human nature is such that you will never fully satisfy anybody.
You're taking the philosophical approach.
Yes. Secondly, I also said that a lot of times, the more you answer the question, the more the question changes. Now, the reshuffle has been effected by the president. Obviously, in his wisdom, he has analyzed the members of the cabinet and has decided that he will fix different ministers in different positions. Now, as to their credentials, obviously, these people were vetted, and Bandi has mentioned how dissatisfied he is with that process. And currently, as it stands, the vetting is done once, and you can't go back once somebody shifted to a ministry to revet for that specific ministry. And therefore, most importantly, I think we believe so much in persons. And yet what is important is having strong institutions, so that whoever sits in there, they have to function with those institutions and deliver. But if they can't, then they get ejected from those institutions. So I don't know why we believe so much in individuals, that if you put so-and-so in a particular place today, and today things will change. That shouldn't be the case.
But would you not agree that our institutions to some extent are weak? And so you still haven't answered my question. Does this new cabinet, as nominated, restore public confidence in government?
No, but I think for me, if they are able to deliver services, because you see the cry is delivery of services. For now, I'm not able to judge whether they'll be able to deliver the service, because the public disquiet arises from lack of performance by most of these people. Now, they're going to new ministries, all right? There have been issues, obviously, in some of the areas these people have served in the other ministries, and we don't know where they're going to perform in the other ministries. But for me, I'm a believer of institutional structures, irrespective of the persons that occupy those structures, because people come and go, governments come and go.
Could I first of all, on the new ministers, the Honorable Balala served in tourism before, and his performance was stellar. Probably that's the reason why the president decided he wants him back there, because we have to revamp that sector. But just yesterday, the opposition gave a statement that said we need the positions filled. In fact, wrongly saying that the cabinet was not constitutionally constituted, because those people until yesterday, when the president took the decision, were ministers who had stepped aside. If we are interested in just the games, the reason why we succeeded in the constitution the last time was because we moved it from a political game to the country saying we need a new constitution. If we are going to address this corruption monster, we have to move it from the political sphere, where ODM or CORD or Jubilee or TNA are using it as political football, to actually addressing this problem. And the addressing of this problem has to start from where the president started the other day. When in March the president gave that statement, members of parliament gave him a standing ovation, because they had not thought about the political hats they were wearing. At that point in time, when they were standing to give the ovation, there were Kenyans who had an important thing, and it was top mind. The moment they went back to that evening and the next day, everybody had brought their cup and decided, now so-and-so is being pushed because they come from my backyard, so-and-so is being picked because... Now, for this country, corruption is existential. For us to deal with it the way the president had started. Let's deal with it the way we dealt with AIDS, as a scourge that needs complete, total effort from the president and his team, and the president is on to be held liable, from the opposition and the team, from the rest of the country, from the media, from the business community, from the churches, from the professional associations. Look, no corruption goes on without a lawyer, without an accountant, without some profession, an architect or taking part. No corruption takes place without many people, and unfortunately we don't see the cost of corruption. We see the flashy car that the politician drives, or if parliament was to do its work, corruption would be far much lower. No, parliament doesn't do its work when it comes to corruption.
But the parliamentarian on this panel is saying that you, who advises the president, you're not helping him do his work. Because if you were helping him do his work, and he had this opportunity to go back to the drawing board, you would have said, in addition to the people stepping aside, the six, one who's resigned, you would have said there are problems of incompetence, inefficiency, whatever you want to call them, and perhaps to restore public confidence, some of those people need to leave.
Now, that is a decision for the president, and Badi is using incompetence as a political tool, as opposed to, the president has said, I want my team to be more efficient. I want certain processes in my office to be different. I want to have this action plan. What is the difference between now and March? Badi asked, what is the difference between now and March? The difference is One, right now there's an action plan with timelines, with X to be done, and that's one of the bill is one of the items that's on that action.
So if we look
number
at your
two, if I could just finish. Number two, this is whole now. It is really a partnership between business, government, all the arms of government. Parliament was represented. The counties were represented, the judiciary was represented, the church was represented, the media was represented, the chairman of the Editors Guild and his vice chair were both there. This is really the way we need to fight it. Let us hold the politics. We are going to go into political season very soon, silly season. But can we hold for the next 1 year we deal with corruption? Otherwise, we will not really have a country to fight for.
Mutegi, what do you think? Because when you look at some of the individual appointments, and David, I'll come to you. Mr. Mbadi's point, someone like Mr. Kaimeni, accused of, taking the bull in a china shop approach to education, which is a critical sector for this country, and then sent to a sensitive docket like lands, right? Does that make sense?
For political reasons, yes.
Why?
He's on the government side.
He's on the government side.
No, I'm not in government. I'm a journalist.
Absolutely.
Really physical here.
You're on the opposition side, aren't you?
Theoretical.
Also, you're
I'm at the center.
You see, if you remember Kibaki, when Minister Karaito Murungi and others stepped aside, Kibaki returned them. Now the president has said, even those who are cleared, since were mentioned, they stay. I think that's a bold matter. And you know there was a lot of clamor. These people from a tribe, they returned them. Why are you not talking Waiguru? And blah, 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 blah. So I think it's a bold move. What I don't understand is why he brought some characters there also.
Who are you calling characters?
The politicians. Maybe it's because of experience, but I cannot justify why he brought them. Yeah.
David, what's perplexing you about the reshuffle?
The characters.
The characters as well. Okay.
Now, Mbadi is a politician, so
I agree with him, but we hope that this cannot be repeated.
So this would then be the opposition side.
Yeah, you see, first of all, I think that for PR, I think the president did a good job in keeping out the ministers who had stepped aside. I think he earns marks because people wanted to see something fresh.
Is there anything to the timing, given that Ms. Waiguru resigned at the weekend and days later?
Well, I guess these things had certain ways of, they were being graduated from one point to another, and there are certain things which are expected, which didn't happen, which again might also be coming in the next 2 weeks, as the president promised. But I think overall, the impression that the reshuffle creates is a good one, is a good feeling, that some people have been kicked out who are, perceived to be part of the problem. And of course, there are those who are going to. I think the greatest loser here is Charity Ngilu, given her tenure as a lands minister and what she did there with gusto, and now she's left there in the sun. There are many questions to be raised about where she is and what happens to her next, and whether Mbadi and his code people are waiting for her on the other end
to cross the floor.
But I have a problem with the president making appointments such as that of Charles Keter, that takes somebody out of politics into cabinet, with the implications of having to have by-elections in the same
so Charles Keter and
so forth. Why was that necessary? Even for regional ethnic balancing and all these things, why would that be necessary? Two, Professor Kaimeni has been one of those people thought was not functioning. His ministry didn't work. Even if he needed to keep somebody from that region in the government, why didn't he even go for Kileme Mwire or somebody else to bring on board somebody without issues? As on this side,
the opposition side.
on the opposition side, that wasn't a masterstroke at all. But there are obviously other appointments here that made some sense. Fresh people, I mean, a couple of people I know here who have come into the cabinet who might bring a fresh face. But my biggest problem is that this goes back to the Grand Coalition government. Look at this, 41, we're back to the Grand Coalition bloated government. 41 so-called departments, but in fact they're just ministries, with a lot of splitting of small departments. I'm saying maritime commerce. Now, what is that? You begin to educate the country about some ministries and departments.
Okay, allow him to take the question.
So can I part of the process we're doing is a learning curve. We've just done the first 2.5 years or 3 years of this new setup under the new constitution. You remember in the Grand Coalition cabinet, we had actually 90 ministers and assistant ministers, and therefore 90 PSS. So we had 90 state departments, so to speak, and 90 ministers and assistant ministers. We have no assistant ministers. We have 20-something cabinet ministries. That has caused a lot of problems when it comes to running government, because you have squeezed everything. These are huge departments. Remember, each of those was a ministry on its own before. Right now, it's one minister and several. Number two, many of these people were in the earlier setup were in parliament. So when me and Buddy served in 10th parliament, the ministers were colleagues. Now there's a de-link. Part of the problem in the running of government now is that the executive and the legislature are separated. If you ask members of parliament right now, almost unanimously they'll tell you they think it's better to have ministers coming from MPs, because they feel there is a complete missing link in that process. That's probably what is making the president pull out some of the politicians, so that you have a closer link between the executive and the legislature. As to why he chose one or the other, it's above my pay grade. That's why the president is elected as the president.
Okay, we have to take a break. We'll continue the conversation. We're unpacking the cabinet reshuffle announced last night by President Kenyatta. This is Cheche. We're live on Citizen TV. Send us your thoughts. Our SMS number is 22422, or you can tweet us using the hashtag Cheche.